And welcome back to this special edition of Hannity's America, Obama and Friends, History of Radicalism, Volume 2. Now, as we've shown you, Barack Obama has a long history of associating with controversial figures. In his first book, he talks about a close friendship with a man that he only refers to as Frank. But years later, he disappeared from another edition of Obama's memoirs. Now, what we show you here is the reason why, and we think you'll understand.
That's a lie! America!
Barack Obama's relationship with controversial figures seems to be a list that keeps growing, and it may have started at a very early age. After his father left the family when he was only 2 years old, his mother remarried and moved back to Indonesia. Obama then returned back to Hawaii in 1971 to live with his grandparents, where he could benefit from an American education. He would live there for the next 8 years. During this time, when a young Barack Obama would have looked to his father for guidance and advice, there was nobody to turn to, and some say he found what he'd been looking for in a friend of his grandfather's. Obama refers to this person in his book, Dreams from My Father, as a poet named Frank. Obama writes, quote, "He lived in a dilapidated house in a rundown section of Waikiki. Frank was an intriguing figure, quote, with his books and whiskey breath and the hint of hard-earned knowledge behind the hooded eyes." So who is this man named Frank? David Ferdozo, the author of The Case Against Barack Obama, says it's none other than Frank Marshall Davis.
Frank Marshall Davis was a famous poet and a member of the Communist Party USA. Davis was a very provocative figure. His poetry advocated for black soldiers to take up arms against the United States. He wrote, "Hey, Uncle Sam, you sure you want to give me a gun?" He was a very radical political communist.
A 1951 report of the Commission of Subversive Activities publicly identified Frank Marshall Davis as a member of the old Moscow-controlled Communist Party USA. Now, Davis was a known communist sympathizer, beholden to the same elements that sought the overthrow of our government and the end to American power. And this was the man that Obama looked to for guidance?
Davis became something of a father figure at a time when Obama was wondering and struggling with all these racial issues. Someone who could guide him, to help him understand race. Of course, Davis's view of race, though, was very radical.
One of the most defining moments of Obama's early years was an event involving his grandmother.
Obama's grandmother had had an incident in which a black panhandler had approached her, I guess, a bit aggressively, and she really flipped over it. She kind of freaked out. And Obama's grandfather took this to mean that she had been prejudiced against the man because he was black.
Obama wrote in his book, quote, "The words were like a fist to my stomach." So who did the future presidential candidate turn to during that time?
He went to visit Frank Marshall Davis, who told him basically, white people can never really understand you. They have not seen the kinds of things black people felt. They have not felt the kind of humiliation black people have felt. And he told him, black people have reason to hate. And in fact, your white grandmother understands that fact.
This clearly had a lasting effect on Obama. While defending his relationship with the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, he spoke of that fateful day.
I can no more disown him than I can disown my white grandmother. A woman who helped raise me, a woman who sacrificed again and again for me, but a woman who once confessed her fear of black men who passed her by on the street.
Before leaving to go to Occidental College in 1979, Obama turned to Davis for some last-minute advice. The radical writer told Barack Obama, quote, "You're not going to college to get educated, you're going to get trained. They will train you to forget what you already know. They will train you so good that you'll be believing what they tell you about equal opportunity and, quote, the American way." So does Obama's relationship with Frank Marshall Davis sound familiar? Well, it should.
Who cares about what a poor black man has to face every day in a country and a culture controlled by rich white people?
Was Obama looking for another mentor, another radical father figure to continue where Frank Marshall Davis left off?
Frank Marshall Davis and Reverend Jeremiah Wright approach racial issues the same way. basically that there can be no true reconciliation between people of different races.
The book Dreams from My Father, which references Frank Marshall Davis, was written in 1995 before Obama had national aspirations. However, in the audiobook version, which was released in 2005, Obama was already a U.S. Senator, and significant references to Frank Marshall are left out. So the question is, why are so many of these passages missing? And who decided to take them out? Now, Hannity's America contacted Random House Audio about the missing references, and a spokeswoman said, quote, "It was a collaborative effort in which Obama was involved and in which he had approval over all cuts." So is Obama trying to hide his relationship with Davis, just as he tried to hide the true nature of his relationship with the Reverend Jeremiah Wright and others? And can you blame him? Davis was a communist, obsessed with race, who used all sorts of outlets to peddle his radical ideas. Barack Obama wants to be the leader of the free world, and with mentors like Davis and Wright, well, who needs political enemies?